Welcome to Ren Behind the Practice. I'm Sophie Campisi. I'm a holistic business strategist and startup expert, and I spend a lot of my time in conversation with practitioners, coaches, and healers about the behind the scenes of their businesses. What I started noticing is that some of the most honest, important conversations about building a practice were happening quietly, one-on-one, behind the scenes, and often in isolation. Most practitioners are incredibly skilled at the work they do with their clients, but very few of us were ever taught or trained in how to build a successful startup business. And suddenly we've been left to figure it out on our own. This podcast exists to bring those conversations forward, the dreams, the uncertainty, the highs and lows, the recalibrations, and the messy middle. My hope is that by normalizing these conversations, we can soften the stigma, feel less alone, and start closing the gaps together. Today's guest is Julie Raque. Julie is a keynote speaker and workshop facilitator dedicated to empowering women. Through her work, she blends reflection, practical tools, and real conversation to help women build confidence and momentum personally and professionally. Julie, it's so great to have you here. Thank you for showing up and having this conversation with me today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. This is wonderful.
Before we look behind the scenes today, can you share with us a little bit more about the work that you do?
Sure, would love to. So the short version is because it's a 34-year long story. But the short version is at the age of 28, I was widowed with two small children. And so raised them by myself. And of course, today they're both in their 30s and living successful lives, starting their own families. And throughout all those years, of course, I was nose down and taking every step each day to make sure that I did my darndest as a quality parent to raise them, and was successful, thank goodness. And I didn't realize at that time the leadership I was taking in it, how my strength was showing up. I was just doing what I had to do. I had two small kids. They were one was 2, one was 7 months, fully dependent on me. And I was doing what I had to do to get through each day. Fast forward to when they're both off in college and starting their young lives, and I had women coming up to me and, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? I'm like, I don't, what do you mean, how'd I do it? You just did it. So one conversation led to another, and I realized that through I was also empowering my daughter as I was raising her. I wasn't just speaking the language, I was showing her how to do it. And other women started to see it when they would see us come together as families at social occasions. And they would say, how'd you do it? And I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. So I kind of looked into it and I realized through some conversation with close friends and some other experts that I have a skill set that some women weren't raised with. And unbeknownst to me, that I did not know that growing up, that I was being given a foundational toolbox that some individuals don't have. So when I learned that, and of course, like I said, raising my kids, and especially my daughter being the same gender, I dug my heels in and I was determined. I said, nope. I said, women need to be empowered and know that they have a voice and to know that they are their own hero of their story. And if they don't know it, then I feel called to help walk them through, which is what I do in my keynote and my workshops, to discovering that. And if one person at each speaking engagement I have can take that home with them and realize that it was successful. My passion usually enters the room before I do because I'm determined.
As a mother, I have a 3-year-old and a 13-month-old. So,
Yeah.
huge. I feel you so much personally because I'm so in that phase right now. So I want to just before I even ask anything else, acknowledge you for everything that you just shared, your journey, your paths, everything that you went through to get to this place that you are now raising two successful children after being widowed. And I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, it was challenging. And I don't pretend for 1 minute I don't want to make it sound like it was easy because it wasn't. And, initially when I got up in the mornings, they were up fussing and bellies were empty and diapers were full. So you took care of those two problems. And then thank God for the Barney videos. I popped in a Barney video with a glass of juice and a Pop-Tart. And then I got another 45 minutes before I had to flip the switch again. Initially we were in 2-hour segments. The intervals were every 2 hours. We get past lunch. I thought, oh, thank God, it's nap time. And then I got a little hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe a little bit longer sometimes. And that was the early phase. And I remember a girlfriend calling me several months later, and he died in October. So I say several months, it's more like springtime. And she asked me, she said, how you doing? And I said, well, I know things are getting better, but they're not great. She said, well, how do you know they're getting better? I said, I'm making it to dinner time before I'm exhausted. Before I woke up exhausted. And so, but it was a path. It was a journey. Still is some days. So yeah, it was not by any means, it was not easy to everyone's point. But when you are the only provider to your two children, there was no other direction to go. uh,
So today, now, what is the general business structure of your work? Do you work with people directly one-on-one? Do you mostly do engagements, like paid engagements? What's the behind the scenes of the business structure?
So currently, keynotes, and I do my workshop, Be the Hero of Your Own Story workshop. They are paid, so it just depends on the audience and the association or the company that brings me in. I can work with folks one on one. I've had different sidebars after the engagements or even beforehand in some cases. So I'm happy to do that. That hasn't happened yet, but it's always the opportunity is always there. But yeah, so it typically, and the workshop is usually at least 90 minutes. I always, because you need at least 10 to 15 people, it's 10 to 16 people, because we do, it's interactive. So I always say, hey, folks, grab a partner, and I walk them through some exercises. And if there's one person left out, either three people do it, or I'll jump in with that one person and help them. And the keynote, it's obviously can be an audience of 10, couple hundred, what have you, doesn't matter. But the keynote is where I kind of tell my story of being widowed, and I walk them through several different chapters of that era of our life. And then I use one particular tool that's in the workshop with the audience in that moment, and then kind of give them a taste of it and say, if you're interested and you want me, I would happy to talk. So yeah, it's just one of those things where, and currently, like, there's one nonprofit agency here in Tennessee. I've come in for them and met with their mom's group, and they have loved it. And I'm going back, and we're going to do a sequel, if you will, the next phase. I remember one of them asking me, "What made you do this workshop?" And I thought the short version is I'm bound and determined to empower women, for those who need it, and even the high level women at the high level leadership levels. I find that while they will show up looking empowered, they have their little girl moments too. So that they've also benefited from my workshop and my keynote.
When you look ahead to the next 6 to 12 months, what goals do you have for your work and for your business?
The goals are three more keynotes and three more workshops. So six total for the remainder of the year, or in this case, beyond. And I want them to be, they can be leadership summits, they can be women's organizations, networking groups. They can, like I said, nonprofits, the moms groups, single parenting. It doesn't necessarily have to be women. I know there are men out there that are single parents. It's just, I think in some cases, women resonate with my message more because we struggle with a lot of the same challenges. A man walks into the room and authority is handed to him. He doesn't have to ask for it. Women walk into the room and they sometimes need to ask for it depending on the room they walk into. So I'm not necessarily, excluding men, but yet the women tend to resonate with my message more.
What do you feel like you need to do to get to that point of your next 6 to 12 engagements? Do you feel like you're guessing, or do you feel like you have an idea of what it's going to take?
A little bit of both. I have an idea of what it's going to take, but it's a matter of getting those organizations to commit. And I say that because some of the folks I'm working with now, they have they were doing their budgeting Q4 of last year. So this calendar year taken. So it's a matter of getting into their calendar and their budget for, in this case now, 2027, and or that they're in, while the budget may be there, their calendar's full. So I also am prepared if in case someone cancels on them, and I can jump in and take that spot. And in some cases, it's guessing as well because again, I'm new to the field, the industry, as far as delivering the message publicly, and people are, they're like, is she worth it? Are the attendees going to take away what she promises? So, and I said yes to all those, but until there's proof in the pudding. And like I said, some of the folks I've worked with already, they've already given fabulous feedback and they're having me come back. So that's all good news. But like anyone else, especially with, if it's a women's summit leadership group, they want to see the profile at prior engagements. That's part of the struggle. And so that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, it's like what comes first, the chicken or the egg a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
Which,
So
yeah, it's a challenge at the beginning, and building trust at the beginning. It is the most, I mean, it's fundamental to everything, and it's the most important thing, but it's the most difficult thing at the beginning, how to build trust. Of course, there's a certain point when trust, the momentum is going and it's way easier to build trust. And what we do, most of what everyone's telling us to do, it will work. But at the beginning, a lot of that stuff is misguided advice. You and I talked about this a little bit before we started recording. When people are treating us like we have already found product market fit, it's what I call offer market match. That clarity on the business model, meeting that. Well, it's multifaceted, taking our brilliance and our gifts and our experience and our unique positioning and how we do things, translating that, matching that all the way to real market demand. The middle piece is the structure, the business model. Like, what is the proper setup for that match? And all of those things need to be in place before we try to grow. And so many people are giving us advice and treating us like we already have nailed that. And then it wastes time, money, resources, and energy, and it's confusing and all of the things.
well, yes, and then of course, like you said, to build trust, that they want to see a sizzle reel, and let me go back a little bit. So with the nonprofit that I've worked with already, in the midst of that workshop, one of the women said, if we have, how does someone reach you for another engagement? So I gave her my contact info. She had another nonprofit that she said they need to hear this, but it was for battered women. So everything about them was kept very exclusive and confidential. I said, I respect all of that. I said, you're the contact. Here's my information. Connect me with whomever on your end, and I'll definitely respect that. And she said, well, you should be hearing from so-and-so. A week or two went by and nothing. So I followed up and, said, just as a reminder, I'm ready when you guys are. Let me know. We'll coordinate calendars. And I did that a third time or a second time, I guess, and still nothing. And I respect, if they're not ready, so be it. It's just for whatever reason that they're hesitating. But at the same time, it's and it may have zero to do with what I'm bringing, and everything to do with the confidentiality factor, and then protecting their clientele. So, but right now that's an unknown. So
Exactly.
so that's also part of the challenge. Like, well, if they're not ready, then you move on and you just be ready when they call you, which I am. But it's also but we were talking about passion earlier, and that's also what's itching inside of me. I know they can benefit from this. So please, help me. So, part of my daily prayers is help me get connected to this group of women, because my message is also very relatable for the young girls, the preteen teenagers, that hopefully if they hear the message and it resonates, they can fast forward a little bit through that cycle and enter young adulthood with the confidence that their moms may be struggling with, and make up some groundwork there.
Thanks for sharing all that, because this is actually a really fun, my expert lens is like, oh, this is like a really fun, example of so many amazing things this is normal in the startup phase. You're not doing anything wrong. The
Thank you.
problem is that, yeah, the problem is that people aren't trained in understanding how to navigate or support people in the startup phase. And so it's just a mismatch. That's part of why we think we're doing things wrong, or we think we're behind. You mentioned this earlier. We think we're 10 steps behind. No, it's just like it's a mismatch. It's like bringing golf gear to a soccer match or soccer gear to a golf green. It's just the wrong time and place. It's not that one's better or worse. It's the wrong time and place. People don't have these startup distinctions. And so they aren't effectively helping people like you, because everything that you just said, I'm like, ooh, this is amazing, because this is a perfect example of like classic startup. This is all normal. Nothing's wrong. There is stuff you have to do to navigate through it, But it's like, this is normal. This is what's to be expected in the startup phase. There's a way to find those answers and get clarity on that. And that's part of, again, maybe a way to explain the difference of what's missing, I guess, or what, I'm so aware of what's missing because yeah, as you said all that, I'm like, oh, cool. This is a fun problem to figure out. Problem in terms of just like exercise. Like this is just normal. This is a cool one. This is, some of the distinctions that you gave are really specific. So if you don't mind me like, giving just one little tidbit.
Yeah, sure.
We talked about our gifts, our brilliance, our skill. Then we talked about matching that to real market demand. In between that, what is the fun part for someone like me, but can be the difficult, tricky part until you understand how to find it, is the business model, the clarity and the simplicity of the business model that also is comprised of offers, for example, the offer. Because something I'm going to add to this whole thing is sustainability is not just financial. So it's also energetic sustainability, right? Can our nervous system hold it? Can we energetically hold it? Is it realistic? Especially because most of us, the high majority of us, are solopreneurs and will always stay solopreneurs. Having the ability to hire contractors, but generally, this is the type of businesses that we're running and building. So part of the breakdown, again, you're a perfect example of in the startup phase trying to figure it out, but why you would focus on one of those populations is for sustainability long-term, because you need all of the answers that you're thinking. That domestic violence clinic example is perfect. You have all those questions. You're like, what about this? It could be me. It could be this. Well, you need to find out the answers to all of those and get to know, using that specific example, get to know that population, not just the population. You have two things here. You're going to have a end user and you're going to have the buyer. It's going to be separate. So that's just like a little distinction. Nothing's wrong with that. It's just a little distinction for you to be aware of when you're working with institutions or clinics,
right?
Or companies, right? If you are more of a B2B service provider, B2B2C, your end user is different from the person that's going to make the decisions, who can also be different from the person with the pocketbook.
Yes.
So you have to just, again, nothing's wrong with that. You just have to be aware that these are all the different levels that you're going to be thinking about. But all those things, all those questions that you have, there's going to be answers, but you need to find them. And then, so not only would you get to have the conversations to answer those questions, but then you get to know the people that you're serving really well, and you get to know them inside and out so that you're nailing it, because then you can repeat that. But what's not repeatable is not getting to that level of knowledge in detail, in depth of connection with this pocket of the world, and trying to do it with lots of different things, because you can't repeat that, because you have to be so in tune. You have to know all of the answers to those questions to nail it, which you can do. And then you repeat it to the next domestic violence shelter. Why could you do that then? Because you know all the answers to those questions already.
Yes.
You know what their concerns are going to be. So you can already acknowledge those. You know what their problems are going to be. All those things you can figure out. But until we do that and navigate this process, there's going to be too many unknowns. So we can't nail it with anyone, because it's going to take a level of focus, devotion, commitment to one area to get to know that area inside and out, including all the business details that you'll need to know to nail the business model. And then once you get so good at something, why would you do something else? Because you found the thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. No, that's excellent information. Thank you.
Yeah. And I do want to add this because of what I just said. And this is how I teach people in business building. You won't be locked into one pocket forever, but you will be for the beginning.
Okay.
You nail it at the beginning. And then later on, you could do teens, right? But when you do teens, I have a graphic that I show people and I teach them about this. At the beginning, you do have to focus so clearly on one to nail it, because then you get the momentum, you get the finances, there is flow going. So then when you start off on the second, so say just hypothetically, okay, you nail it with these domestic violence shelters, and that is, you're the go-to. Everyone knows that Julie Raque is the woman that works with our population. The trust is built. Anyone mentions battered woman, they're already thinking your name, right?
Gotcha.
Like that's what you want. Then you've been doing that 5 years and you're like, yeah, I'm seeing this thing. There's these young women, whatever a version of that would be. And they're like, yeah, this is my next thing. Then you start doing it, but you already have momentum going, right? Like
Right.
you already have that going. So you have the space and the time you could say, but the resources, like it's so much easier to then nail the second one because it's already going with the first one.
Gotcha.
Because
Okay.
you're going to have to go through all those same steps again. It's not
Right.
necessarily that you can skip any, but now you aren't strapped for cash in the same way. You aren't
Right.
strapped for resources. You aren't strapped for as much, let's just, just trust. Even if it's a new population, there's a lot more to go off of, if that makes sense.
It's very much so. Thank you. It does. And you're right. It's like my I'm part of a couple different networking groups, and of course they always bring in speakers. And I've done beta. Initially, I did beta tests with some of those, and things went great. But I could tell that those women, they had some of the same tools in their boxes I already have. So I thought, well, okay, so I just need to tweak it to better suit this audience. And then I got asked to come to this nonprofit, and of course, it went exceptionally well. And I thought, okay, this is where it needs to be for now. So to your point, so there can be two different versions of the same workshop, and you build because one of the tools in the workshop I have, or activities, I should say, that I'll walk them through. They came up to one came up to me afterwards, said, "I've used that in business. It never occurred to me to use it in my personal life." I said, "It's interchangeable, yes, ma'am, and I'm so glad that that's helped you." And we kind of talked about it a little bit. So, but I thought that's huge. Again, even it was a small thing, but it was a big thing because she didn't even think to use it. The exercise itself she was familiar with, but to translate it into her personal life was a huge life bulb moment for her. And I went, okay, that's what I need to hear, and that worked. So it was just, yeah, I always take all the feedback and implement as much as I can. And to your point, it gets customized and tailored per the audience.
And when
So
you
yeah,
and when you yeah, and when you focus on one, and that's part of why it's vital not only for the business model, but it's vital for your own mastery to focus on one, maybe two, for exactly what you just said, because ultimately you want that experience like I described earlier. When someone says this thing, they think your name.
yes,
That's what you want. And so if you focus in on one or two and you repeat it, then all of those tidbits that someone comes up and they said this, you're like, yep, okay. And especially if someone says that twice, you're like, okay, this is a thing I will keep saying. And then you become masterful at
yes,
working that specific group, that specific population. So not only does your confidence go up, the quality of your work goes up, your mastery goes up, and then you can provide results much quicker.
yes,
It's undeniable at that point. And that's how it happens. And it can feel counterintuitive to people at the beginning because focusing in on one or narrowing in on one, it can be like, oh, it's so limited. What about these people? I could help anyone. It's someone I just interviewed on the last episode. She said it so well. If you try to help everyone, you can't really help anyone.
mm-hmm.
You can't really help anyone really well, and especially not at the level that we care to, because we are the people that walk the walk. The integrity of our work and the quality of our work really matters. And this isn't just, oh, we can kind of half-ass a product because whatever. No, these are people's lives. We can't compromise on the quality because this is people's well-being and it's their lives. And there's a lot at stake, especially when you're talking about some of the populations that you've mentioned, teen girls, battered women. The stakes are really high.
Yes. Well, and their trust. They have none. Now, granted, I walk in as a woman, and hopefully, there's some trust already established there versus a man walking in to give the keynote. But yeah, and then what I have had some people, they look at me like, but there's no way I can do that. And that's one reason why I share a high level version of being widowed. It's definitely a Debbie Downer of a story, and I don't share it to tell them that I can. I don't to bring the room down. I share it to let them know I connect with you. I've survived. I was literally in survival mode for 15, 16, 18 years And even beyond that, once they turn 18, nothing magical happens other than legally they're an adult. They're still not financially independent. So, and I know when I did that, matter of fact, with the workshop with this nonprofit, at the end of the workshop, I had pictures of my family, little when they were the babies, and then current day, and they went, oh, collectively, and they were all oohing and awing, and that I had not done that in prior workshops. And when I did that, the room, the energy, I'm like, oh my gosh, why have I? And somebody asked me that, and I said, I realized why I hadn't done it because I, like a lot of mothers, we protect our babies, even if they're in their 30s. And my daughter is having her first child, my first grandchild, so I'm even more protective. And I felt like I was exposing them or putting them out there publicly, and they didn't want that. But then when I realized, no, that brought life to the workshop, and the attendees resonated with my story so much more, and realized they saw the babies as babies when I was single parent, and then they saw and like, okay, yes, that's 25, 30 years later, but there was, whatever success looks like to that individual, their success. And so it was very, it was powerful for me in that moment to realize I need to be more authentic and at the same time protecting my family. But, anyway, that was a huge lesson for me, and it resonated very much.
It's all about building trust and
Yes.
authenticity. In 2026, authenticity is the name of the game for building trust, even for experts. So I just talked about this on the last episode. Today's, for lack of a better term, consumers, authenticity is absolutely at the core of building trust with them. And it comes from being vulnerable and sharing story. And today's consumer is sophisticated enough, whether they're conscious of it or not, to know that that does not negate expertise. It does not negate quality of work.
To that point, so I have a master's in organization development, project management, training, and facilitation. But so what were my workshops and my keynote is like they connected a professional path and a personal path. That's the intersection. But to the point earlier about working with the nonprofits and the battered women, I wonder if part of why people are going to want more of an expert level when it comes to the textbook education. That I can tell them what my master's is in and how it's helped facilitate me down this path. But if there's wanting someone from a therapeutic or a therapist industry or counselor's industry, yeah, of course I don't have that. So I've considered going into behavioral research. How do you see that being a complement, a good partnership versus an actual therapist license, or with the nonprofit?
They would tell you the answer is have the conversations with them. So the advice is absolutely do not get more certified or dive into anything until you can validate that would work.
Okay.
So you would have a conversation. So maybe you do at some point find a way to have a conversation for someone that works at a domestic violence clinic. Maybe not the one that you've been connected with. You just have a conversation, not to try to sell to them or tell them about your services, but it would be something like, hey, something way more casual in terms of like, you're just trying to get the data,
Yeah.
I've been doing this with these types of nonprofits. I've been really interested. Feel passionate about battered women. I'm a survivor of this. What are some of the things that y'all bring in? Do y'all even bring people in? Is that something that just never happens? These are the types of questions that you want to ask them. You don't tell them what you do. Do y'all ever bring people in? Oh, okay. You don't? Why? Then you would know. Don't spend more time there. They don't ever bring anyone in just for safety reasons. So that's just a data point for you. Not that anything's wrong. Your work is still valid. You'll just go start focusing on a different population. Maybe they say, yeah, we do bring people in sometimes. Why? What moves the, lever? Like, what is the lever to why you'd bring someone in? Then they will tell you, like, that's the type of stuff you want to know. Oh, okay, well, I noticed that person's a psychologist. Is that something that's important for y'all? Yeah, it's always going to be someone that has doctor before their name or has these sort of certifications, because in our bylaws, we can only bring people in with one of these 6 because the state governs our funding? I'm making all this stuff up, but just to give you an idea. Okay. I don't have any idea about this. I'm just giving you an idea of like what you're looking for, the types of conversations you want to know, because that would be something that would be such valuable information for you.
Yes.
Especially it would be valuable if they were like, and this would be gold. We struggle to find people who meet all of the qualifications for what our bylaws say someone has to meet before we can bring them in. But we want to bring more people in. Our women are craving to have more, and we're craving to bring them more. But before we can bring someone in, they need to meet these 5 things. And it's so hard to find someone that meets these 5 things. Okay, that's gold, right?
Yes.
See how the conversations I'm approaching that? Those are the ways that you navigate the startup phase, because every conversation is actually not about selling at first. It's actually about getting that type of data. That's gold for you, because either no, like there's too many hurdles, so I'm not going to waste my time. Nothing's wrong, but like that's not a good business model for me. Or you're like, wow, they struggle to find people and they need these 5 things. Okay, what would it take for me to meet those 5 things?
Exactly.
6 months, 9 months, 12 months? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And if I can meet those, there's so much demand, and you validate it, you'd have that conversation with a couple more people in that role. If you had 5 people say the same thing, your chances of success are almost inevitable.
Okay, that's a good answer.
Yeah, but do you see how that works differently when
do.
you're seeking to find out these specific things about why they bring someone in, why they don't? If they do, what is it that has them choose someone? What has them bring someone in? Again, when you're navigating the startup process well and effectively, these are the ways, this is what you're looking for. You're not actually generally looking for clients right away, because it's that classic, I don't know if this metaphor really fits. You can feed someone once or you can teach them how to fish. It's that same thing.
Right.
You can get one client, but unless you know why they said yes, doesn't really give you a lot of data to repeat it.
Exactly.
You're just like, oh, okay, I wonder why. It worked for them. And no, like you actually want the data, because if you understand the air quotes, how to fish, if you understand why they said yes and all the nuances, that's how you build a business that will be successful and sustainable for all of time. As long as you want to be doing that, it will not go away, because you uncover the reason they said yes so that you can repeat that and be a dream come true for your clients, whoever they are.
Perfect. And that makes total sense. So yes, you've lifted my spirits a little bit about the battered women's group that I haven't heard from. And it was interesting, because what I need to do is find out from her. I need to connect with the contact that was at the workshop. And I don't know if she'll share anything, but like you said, I can at least reach out and ask. And yeah.
Yeah, and if it's something that you're really interested in, try to find people to talk to. I have some experience with this, and I know that the stuff is pretty confidential. So that could be, again, that's something that you want to know up front, because if you can't find them to ask simple questions to, it is a very risky place to build a business model around.
Yes. Well, and then to a friend of mine who is a therapist, I was kind of explaining to her how the workshop went, and that this other woman wanted to bring me into the other group. She said, well, during your workshop, she said, if you don't mind, let us walk through it together. She said, because there might be some triggers. And so what you're going to want to do is, put that out there in the beginning. And then I thought, oh, wow. I said, so now I need to like really add to my toolbox how to handle those little moments that, in the beginning, they're all fine. And 15 minutes later, I got someone curled up in the corner over here crying. I mean, generally I would know how to handle that, but there might be something more professionally going on there that I would not be equipped to handle, because I'm not the psychologist or therapist. So
Totally.
I thought that's why I considered, behavior research.
Well, only make changes or adjustments to anything that you're doing once you can validate that. Just know, okay, if I actually get in, if someone says yes, I'm going to need to do some prep, but do not change anything or do any of that work until
you get
there
in.
is a real reason to do it.
Okay.
Because right now you're really in the search phase, you're in the discovery phase. It's going to work. You will figure it out.
Yeah.
If we can approach the startup phase knowing that it has nothing to do with my work, it has nothing to do with the quality of it, whether my work is going to get out into the world or not has nothing to do with that. It truly is a matter of matching it to the right place. When
Thank
we
you.
can see that that's actually what we're trying to figure out in the startup phase, and we're actually at the beginning, the quality of our work actually isn't ever a problem.
No.
It's all this other stuff, but we think it's the quality of the work. So we'll constantly tweak and change things and adjust. And we put so much focus on the quality, and it's not the quality. So at the beginning, if we can be approaching the startup phase with that curious mind that really every conversation is a data point for us, because our success is inevitable when we know that this is what we're trying to do. It will work. We will find a place that it fits. The question is finding a place that it fits. It's not about the work or not. It's just finding the right place to make it fit. Thinking of the logistics, thinking of sustainability again. Yeah, I know this is a lot. Happy to talk to you again after we finish this. But yeah, these are the types of things that you actually want to find out early on, and do not invest time, money, energy, or resources into anything other than having it be kind of like a hypothesis. So
Yeah.
being like, oh, okay, I need to remember that. But right now, I'm not going to change anything because there's no validated market demand. I don't know that this is even a place that is worth it for me in terms of the business model, because it might be a non-starter. It might just be too hard. And every new clinic is going to take me 6 months or 12 months, and maybe it will never happen, right? Well, that's just not a smart move for us.
Right.
Not that anything's wrong, and it's not to say that later on you wouldn't end up in the clinics, but it wouldn't be a great starting place.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Makes total sense. Okay.
I'm going to ask you one last question before we finish. If you could wave a magic wand and have one thing solved or fixed for you in your building process, what would that be?
Wow, I think it's literally what we just finished talking about. Finding the answers to those questions and finding the audience and the organization that has those attendees. That would be it. You've helped me to see that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Because it goes back to what we've talked about, and I'm sure even in prior episodes on your podcast. It's I've been in the corporate world for 15 plus years, and it has ups and downs, and it's just, I know this is my path. I have I've never been more convinced of it. I know this is my path. It's a matter, but it does. I like everyone else, you have to have the sustainable income to go with it, and yet those nonprofit groups don't usually have the budget to pay speakers or workshop facilitators. So it's fun. So those two, they have to come into alignment somewhere. So that, yes, thank you.
Yeah, let's talk again some more. But because, yeah, I mean, just really quick, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. There is not a one size fits all in terms of the business model, because if nonprofits, they don't have big budgets. But if you nail it and you're the go-to, and you know that you'll have 20 engagements every week, because now like that's just the flow, then that's a good business model. Even
Yes.
if the price isn't, right? Like it doesn't matter. There is no one size fits all. All that matters is that it all lines up, right? That you can validate each one, and that ultimately it's sustainable. Maybe you're like, no, at this phase of my life, that's not the type of volume. Okay, then no, maybe nonprofits isn't great because you're like, no, I need something that it balances out financially this way. Fine. But it would be your choice, realizing that you are consciously making that choice, because that's not a sustainable business model for you, but you could make it work. You know what I'm saying? It's not just because someone doesn't have a huge budget isn't a non-starter, as long as it all checks out. But if it doesn't, then yeah, you'll find someplace else, and then maybe you get back to that. Often, we go to the place where there's the most need, and it's not always the easiest in terms of the business model. But I'm here to say to you and anyone that's listening, we will get to that population. It's just probably going to be our third, our fourth, our fifth kind of pocket that we reach once we get things going and we have it. Because there might be some point where, you are booking keynotes or workshops with this other population, and that pays the bills, and you have space and time. You're like, yes, it's now the clinics, it's now the nonprofits, and da da da. So yeah, just want to
that would be
remind you of
fantastic.
that. Yeah.
Poof, done. If only.
Julie, thank you so much for joining me today to have this conversation. And for those of you who are listening, if any part of this resonated, you're in the right place, please reach out. I want to hear from you. And if you want to reach Julie directly, the links to her website and her speaking profile are in the show notes. Thank you again, Julie. And to everyone else, thank you for listening. And we'll see you for the next episode of Ren Behind the Practice.